so happy to be back, not only at NOVA, but also, of course, at the EurAfrican Forum. And I thought that I was going to be presented by Anita. So I was going to start by saying that it's always a pleasure to have her here and to make my first suggestion, because yesterday, João, you told us you need to come with a couple of suggestions for next year. And so my first suggestion is that next year you have to invite more African women, because if they bring half the energy, half the self-assurance, half the pride that Anita brings to this event, I'm sure that this is going to be even best than ever, as the President was saying. So as you said, you asked me to tell you about this summit that is going to take place in November. So it's the 7th EU summit. This time, in fact, the 7th AU-EU summit, since it's going to take place in Angola. Why is it so important this year? Because it's the 25th anniversary of the relations between EU and Africa, so 25 years after the first summit that took place in Cairo. We are again bringing together the heads of state and government of Africa and Europe. Yesterday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs was, very strong on saying that we should speak Portuguese because we are in Portugal. So I'm not speaking in Portuguese, but I'm going to start by saying how important Portugal has been in this context. Not always people remember that, but it was during the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union in 2000 that the first such summit was organized. So it is the EU-AU process is an initiative of Portugal. And the second summit only took place 7 years later, 2007, again under Portuguese presidency. 25th anniversary, and the summit is taking place in Angola. So I think that the Lusophone factor is important to underline. And I think that I'm sure that, all the business people that are here in the room and that are Portuguese know how respected and how well respected Portuguese are in Africa, and I feel that I've been feeling that every day in my 4.5 years in this job, because when at a certain moment of the conversation I make sure that I explain that I'm Portuguese, I see on the other side of the table my African counterparts, relaxing, making a smile, saying, "Oh, you're Portuguese," or "Ah, vous êtes português." So, and I think this is obviously a very positive factor that we bring to the table. Even more important, of course, when we are in a moment as the President was saying, in a current geopolitical context that is so tense, and where there is so much mistrust. That is, I think, one of the big problems that we have currently in the international scene, and the fact that we have been building this trust with our African counterparts is absolutely essential. It is a moment where it's obvious that everyone wants to come to Africa, everyone wants to make business in Africa, to develop political relations. The Chinese, the Russians, the Gulf states more and more, the Turks, and so where Europe needs to continue to make sure that our offer, that the way that we want to continue to engage with Africans is well understood, and that our African counterparts understand that we want to do things differently, that we want to establish a partnership where we are really listening to each other, we are really taking into account the interests of each other, which is absolutely crucial. I remember that after the summit in Brussels in February 2022, I was in an audience like this, talking about the results of the summit, and the Senegalese ambassador who had co-chaired the senior officials meeting with me was sitting there as well. And there was someone in the audience saying, you Europeans, you always come up with solutions, you always, come and decide and impose on us the agenda of our relationships. And the Senegalese ambassador said, no, I want to answer this question. And he said, you are completely wrong, because I was there, I was sitting there. It took us hours and hours of long negotiations, and you can be sure that every word that is in this statement that we have approved together is agreed upon by us, by the African side. So this is the logic of the relationship, and I think that with this and over the years, I think we've managed to come to a different state of relations, where very, very clearly in the last ministerial meeting that took place in May, in Brussels, there was a level of engagement and of trust between African and European leaders that different from previous years. So that is how we are preparing for the summit that will take place now in November, 25th, 26th November in Luanda. As I told you, it's the biggest format that we have in a continent-to-continent relationship. 27 heads of state and government on the youth side, 55 delegations coming from Africa. So a huge meeting that will be taking place in Luanda. If we look into the discussions that took place at the ministerial meeting, so to prepare the summit, there were three themes that kept on coming back on all the interventions. The first one was security, the second one was infrastructure, and the third one was multilateralism. So security, we go back to what the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Portugal was saying yesterday, the peace factor. So, when we can't, of course, the continent can't evolve, can't grow, jobs cannot be created if there is no peace and no stability. And so there was a big plea by our African partners that we continue to support the African solutions for the African problems, and that is what the EU is going to continue to make. To give you an example, since 21, the EU has supported the African Union member states with 1 billion euros in the context of what we call the European Peace Facility. So delivering military equipment and support to African peace forces and security forces. We are present with missions in the continent. You may have heard about the missions in Mozambique, for example, in which the EU was there to support the Mozambican armed forces to fight the insurgency in Cabo Delgado, and that is, I think, a good example of how we've been working very well together in this context. Just like Anita was saying, peace and security need to come with governance, with good governance, and that is not only in what applies to rule of law, to the respect of human rights, but certainly also the economic governance aspects. And there is certainly an area where all of you here present, because you are companies, and you also have a responsibility to help us continue to work together with our African counterparts in that regard. The second point was, as I told you, infrastructure. So a lot of this plea that the European continues to deploy the global gateway. There were sessions yesterday. It came back, and I was happy to see how the brand and the concept now is, I think, better and better understood by everyone. When it started, there were so many people that were talking not about the global gateway, but about the global getaway. So not really understanding what it was about. But I think that now the concept is much clearer, and the EU would continue to work in support of the transport corridors, in the support of initiatives that have to do with the energy and the green transition, that have to do with trade. One aspect that is very important, that I think is important to highlight, is the fact that from now on, there will be a lot of focus, or more and more focus, on the digital transformation. So everything that is artificial intelligence related will be very high on the agenda at the summit, and there's a request, a clear request by our African partners that we develop a cooperation with them in that regard. And that could be a second suggestion for next year, is that you try in the next EurAfrican Forum to concentrate more on these issues that have to do with the artificial intelligence, that have to do also with cyber security. There's a lot of concern about that, a lot of concern also about issues that have to do with foreign information manipulation and interference, FIMI, a lot of concern about what's happening in the social media platforms in Africa and in Europe as well, of course. So all these areas are important. Of course, the cooperation areas of education, science, technology, and innovation will be enablers of the cooperation in the more hardware sectors, and that is what the discussions will be going around. The discussions will take place in a context where, as you've seen, the Commission has presented the first proposal of the next multi-annual financial framework. The first numbers on the table tell us that there is still a relevant idea to support the foreign, the global partnerships of the European Union, and I think that is an important message, certainly, that both President Antonio Costa and President von der Leyen will bring to the table. Another aspect, as I told you, certainly multilateralism. The summit takes place a few days only after the G20 takes place in Johannesburg. The African Union is now a member of the G20 with a strong support by the European Union, and the issues that were very, very present at the summit in Brussels in 2022, I'm sure will come back, because they were already very much alluded to at the ministerial. Everything that has to do with the debt and the financing of development is going to be absolutely central to the discussions. The reforms of the multilateral development banks and the international financial institutions, that is an issue of obvious interest to our African counterparts. The rating agencies, all that will be strongly aspect to be debated. One issue that was not alluded to, but is a bit the elephant in the room, and I think it's important that I talk about it, is of course the issues that have to do with migration and mobility, because people avoid the discussion in these meetings, but it is obviously an issue of concern. Still a difficulty from our African partners to understand why these levels of concern by the European Union, while they are themselves under such a huge pressure. Because or you may not know, 80% of the migration flows that have to do with Africa are internal migration flows, and we are always just looking at these the migration flows to Europe. So this is a discussion that will certainly be, if not be directly taken, will certainly be in the sidelines of the discussion. And there I would come to my third suggestion, that is the role of the diasporas. And if you, because I think it's we have huge African diasporas in Europe, and they can play a really important role, not only in the integration in supporting the integration of African migrants, but certainly in enabling a better understanding of what is really happening in what regards the migration flows between the continents. Last point, just to tell you that this summit has a number of side events. Traditionally, a side event on news, a side event on civil society organizations, and one, of course, a business summit. It was referred to yesterday, and you had a panel in which that was mentioned, and that is, of course, just to highlight it again, that it is certainly a very good opportunity for having strong and useful exchanges with African counterparts in Luanda in November. So I think I'll stop here and leave you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.